The action is pretty competent, very enjoyable to watch. What the hell was I on? You know, there are good movies and there are bad movies, but only a select few make you feel kinda okay while watching them and kinda revolted and prone to hurting yourself after exiting the theater. It's like the movies This Party where you're pretty sure you're having fun while you're there, but as soon as you leave, the alcohol starts wearing off and your ass starts to feel sore from your inner child getting raped. I call it the Last Jedi effect. So, to wash the bad taste away and try to redeem myself in the process, let's compare this fight scene with its 22-year-old predecessor and see what makes the latter so much better. And as a disclaimer, let me say right off the bat, I know Keanu isn't as spry as he used to be. I know COVID made things more difficult, but I don't think Keanu was the main problem. If you look at most of the fights involving him, it's pretty clear that he's still got it, and he's mentioned in interviews that he loves doing this shit. Plus, have you seen the John Wick films? He's a fucking beast. So let's get into what I consider to be the real culprits behind the dismal dip in deftness and overall quality. First of all, look at the amount of cuts in the original, aka how often the editor cuts from one camera angle to another. There aren't really that many. Most of them are reserved for the brief pauses between the actual fighting or to enhance a particular move and bring out the flair in the choreography. There are maybe one or two cuts for the sake of hiding things, like to avoid showing the slower speed of the execution at times, but for the most part it doesn't need to do that because these guys rehearse these fights for months, and it shows. Now let's look at the amount of cuts in Resurrections. That's a lot. Some of these are to hide things, obviously, but a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Like, what the hell is this? Why does that angle even exist? You don't need to do that. Just show him approaching. It's a half a second we're talking about. Look at this. That's 4 cuts for one roundhouse. 4 cuts. That's less than a 2-second move. There are only a couple segments that actually make sense. This one, for instance, looks good, and that's because it's one take. I can actually see what's going on, and Keanu's doing pretty damn good here. Now, admittedly, half this fight isn't really a fight. It's Keanu sitting there soaking up hits, and it can be tough to make that look good, particularly when you're dealing with an elderly chap that's a bit more injury prone than a 20-year-old.
Yeah, you have to pay a little more attention to that. Yeah. Okay, a lot of attention to that.
But there's so many other ways to go about it, and it's not just the cuts, it's the framing. This fight alternates between uncomfortable close-ups, like stuffed elevator close, where you can't see anything, and far away shots. And alternating between one and the other is so jarring. It's the mistaken belief that the more angles you throw at the audience, the more exciting the fight is. Look at the framing in the original. First up, you've got this close-up on Neo as he does his thing that goes with his stirred-up, nervous energy, and then the camera does the opposite for Morpheus to enhance his calm, expansive demeanor. The rest of the fight is dominated by wide framing. The camera goes out of its way to keep both fighters in the frame for the most part. They don't do a bazillion cuts or switch the distance to try and add tension. The only flourish it does in this sense is some slow panning while again keeping them both in the frame. Cuts and alternate angles are reserved for moves that would otherwise fly above the viewers' heads, like this counterattack by Morpheus. Wide shot, heel shot, then center on Neo is much cooler than just a single boring wide shot for the whole move. Plus, it actually makes the move clearer and easier to understand, ironically. Also, side note, dude, the camera doesn't even have enough frames to catch the whole move. That's how fast they are. Other close-ups are used to amplify the impact of particular hits, and that's about it. You don't need anything else, just let the fight speak for itself. And then there's the choreography itself, as well as the general flow of the fights. Neo's moves are very flashy, consisting of a lot of jabs, spinning, roundhouse kicks, and this scissor kick thing, almost like a variation of Liu Kang's bicycle kick. And true to the improvisation aspect, Neo switches stances quite a bit, trying to find the right angle to defeat his opponent.
What if I came at the boulder from a different angle? No. That's the problem.
while generally maintaining a more offensive overall posture. Morpheus, however, mostly keeps to the same wide-open stance, with his arms spread out, ready to catch and repel any incoming attacks. This is a visual expression of his faith. He's calm, expansive in his gestures, and doesn't feel the need to attack because he has faith that he can counter any blow thrown at him, just like he has faith that Neo is the one. In terms of moves, he mostly sticks to just countering in elegant ways, be it through kicks or some kind of grapple into a push or a throw. I also like this part where he messes with Neo a little bit. It's not only funny, it's also realistic. In fact, about 70% of real duels are fake-outs like this. Combat is an extremely stressful situation to be in, the worst case scenario being the loss of a heart or two. So people kinda just feel each other out, throw quick jabs and little fake lunges at each other in order to get better positioning, and because committing to any one move can spell the death of you. It's the same with big-scale infantry battles. People didn't just charge mindlessly at each other in the Middle Ages like a pack of autistic buffaloes. They were much slower and more methodical to try and maintain some kind of coordination. It just makes the fight more believable as opposed to perfectly executing a script of rehearsed moves in sequence with no mistakes or variation whatsoever, and I wish fight scenes had more of this kind of stuff. Anyway, the Matrix Regurgitations flips this dynamic by having not Morpheus over here attack Neo with some of the most laughably bad-looking spins and kicks that I've ever seen, made even more clunky by the circus tent he's wearing. He does all of these overcomplicated jabs and reverse elbow thrusts, and the camera shoots around a lot of it. But when it doesn't, and they actually let them fight, it doesn't look that bad. It's actually pretty good. I think making Neo the defender this time around would have been an interesting idea if they'd have given it more work. As it stands though, there's only one other bit that actually looks decent in this fight, and the special effects like slicing the beam in half and the wire work are cool, but also hobbled by the litany of cuts they chop them into. And in terms of flow, these both kinda work. Misdirections starts off with Neo not wanting to fight, then kinda agreeing to fight, then kinda goes submissive again to try and raise the stakes before beating not Morpheus with force push, a trick he ends up spamming for the rest of the film like the casual button-mashing console player that he probably is. It's okay, but nothing to write home about. Matrix 99, on the other hand, starts the fight with Neo attacking brashly and Morpheus deflecting every blow and absolutely demolishing him. What's cool is that every time Neo gets knocked down, he gets up and tries some kind of new tactic. He also does his best to adapt to Morpheus' style and copy what he's doing.
Adaptation, improvisation.
Then, after an initial defeat, Morpheus decides to push Neo further, and for the first time, we see him switch from defense to offense. This is also when the music changes from the trippy, clubbing music to the more serious, tension-building score. All of these subtle touches cause a shift in the scene and naturally escalate the tension. After a final bit of wisdom from Morpheus, he lunges at Neo again, and slowly but surely, Neo begins to turn the tables on his teacher, slowly overpowering him. This is the final level of tension and anticipation, as Neo displays some brief hints of agent-level speed before cornering his opponent, and we, the audience, are left wondering if what we saw was real, pun intended, or a fluke. Is Neo really the one, or just slightly above average? From a structural standpoint, the fight is pretty much flawless and on par with top-tier shonen battles, as the fighting escalates gradually and naturally to a satisfying climax, all while trickling in some characterization for both combatants and treating the fight not as a fight, but as a storytelling device. We've learned that Neo is brash, that he rushes to prove himself, but also that he's quick to adapt and improvise his way through a fight. All traits that will pay off during his fight against Smith later in the story. We've also learned that Morpheus blindly believes in Neo and is willing to push him over the edge, sometimes recklessly, in order to justify his zealous faith. This also hints at the fact that Morpheus will not blink before sacrificing his life to save Neo's, something that becomes an important plot point later on. Everything from his demeanor to his fighting style to the way he's shot reinforces this. Neo doesn't actually believe he's the one, yet he does his damnedest to prove himself wrong, just so he can prove his mentor right. Ironic, considering he actually ended up being the one, and it's something I think many of us relate to, since oftentimes other people see more potential in us than we do, and we end up tapping that potential not so much for ourselves, but to avoid disappointing everyone else. On the other side of it, Morpheus displays a zen-like calm throughout the whole movie because that's what faith does. It allows you to bypass the struggles, failures, and uncertainties of life based on the assurance that it'll all work out in the end. I mean, why wouldn't it?
I'm sorry.
And all of this spirituality is expertly conveyed through all of his fight scenes, and as far as I've observed, there's no such deeper layer to delve into in the case of the Matrix reconfigurations. It's just punches and kicks with a lot of disjointed camera work on top. The biggest irony in all of this is that Chad Stahelski and David Leitch brought about a renaissance of clear, wide-angle camera work in an age where handheld shaky cam techniques and excessive cuts had become the norm.
This is real.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
I then find it baffling that these same people would condone this kind of bullshit. I know they probably didn't call all the shots, but it's still ironic as hell. The good news is Matrix Resignations kind of flopped, so maybe Warner learned their lesson. Never mind. Damn it, I really wanted to fit all these in. Next time.